curiosity.
Well, thank you, Diane. That was a beautiful introduction. So, first, I just want to say hi. I want to start really with a question for you, and not just that surface level question, because I really want you to feel this topic today. So, my question for you is, who are you without your roles? Not as a mom, not as a wife, maybe not even as a dad or a husband, not as the professional, not even a helper. The one maybe who keeps everything running. When you strip all of that away, if that question really makes you feel uneasy and you're really starting to question, I don't know. That means you're operating from your roles versus your true God-given identity. And that's what I'm talking about today. And as Diane said, I'm Ashley Balza, also known as the Self-Renewal Coach, founder of Arise and Ascend Coaching, mom of 7. I also homeschool. I didn't put that in that bio, but we also homeschool 6 of those 7 kids. Grandmother of 2, and a co-owner of a thriving construction company. So I understand a busy life. And I really want to say, if you're watching this, obviously on the screen right now, or maybe you're catching the replay, or maybe you're watching in your kitchen, your car, your office, or your bedroom, wherever you are, I really need you to know that you didn't land here by accident. There was something that spoke to you when you maybe read the website that said, I need to be there. I need to listen to this. So I want to describe someone to you. He or she is a high functioning person. They're, by most people's standards, they're managing the schedules. They're crushing it. Maybe you see it on social media, you see it in business. They're managing their household, showing up for kids. The reliable one. The one that you can always call and you can count on. You see the performance, again, in business, on social media. You can just pick up the phone and you can call that person when everything in your life seems to fall apart. They're giving, they're leading, they're serving. On the outside, everything looks fine. Put together, looks like they can handle all the things. But on the inside, they're falling apart. They don't remember the last time that they took time for themselves. And ladies, I really want to speak to you right now. Not time for your kids. Not time for your husband or your job. Just time for you. Because you're living your life not in the inside. You're just kind of going through the motions of your day to day. Again, that managing, the producing, the performing for everyone. Maybe it's chasing after those accolades. It's chasing after the validation. But really on the inside, there seems to be this tiny little voice that you have on your shoulder. Or maybe you just feel it in your heart that something is missing. Really, the scariest part of all of that is you can't name it. You can't quite put your finger on what it is that is missing. You've been so busy being everything to everyone, and you've completely lost yourself. But you know that there's this tiny little nudge of, I know she's in there somewhere. I just want to find her again. So I really want you to feel this. And if you're noticing that, like, take your breath away, or that gut punching feeling, it's not a coincidence. And I say all of this because I was that woman. When you sit still every day and you get in tune with your body, or the clients that I sit with and I have them work on this, where they just sit with it. They're wondering, where did I go? And I can relate to them when they say that. And I really want to tell you something that I don't always talk about this publicly. Um, but for a while, actually for a very long time, I was very good at doing all the things, managing the schedule, taking care of the kids, a husband who was working 80 plus hour work weeks. And quite honestly, he still does. But it's it was in that I felt useful, I felt needed, that I was productive. I could check the things off of the list. And I would celebrate. And I would be like, hey, did you see that I got XYZ done? I was seeking the validation because I thought that I was enough based off of the things that I was doing. But yet I still felt empty. Even though I was showing up, I was giving. It didn't make me feel whole. And after I had baby number 6, I found myself sitting in a hospital bed. And if you've ever been hospitalized, you know how lonely a hospital can be. You might have visitors, you might have people coming in and out to check on you, but it's really a very lonely space. And I began to wonder, is this all my life is going to amount to? And that's kind of a sad, depressing question. But it really got me thinking. Is it just going to amount to cooking and cleaning and managing the house and changing diapers and running from one place to the next? Saying yes to everyone. And honestly, letting myself go, not taking care of me. And it provoked an even deeper question. Who had I become? Who was I? Because to everybody else, I was Mikey, Isaiah, Christian, Nevaeh, Joshua, and Elijah. I was their mom. And I was Gary's wife. I was operating in my roles, not who I truly am. As a daughter of God, as a sister in Christ, as just somebody who's redeemed and loved and cherished, more precious than rubies. I wasn't operating from that role anymore. Or should I say that identity? And my life was very full. It was very overflow, if you will. But somewhere along the way, I got sucked up in what society tends to look at us as women, as moms, as those caregivers. Be the strong one. Be the one who does everything, who manages it all. Don't ask for help because that's a sign of weakness. So being in there, in that role, I abandoned myself. And I'm sure you're feeling that too. Where did I abandon myself along the way? And not knowing who I was on the outside of those roles, beyond the wife, the mom, the helper, the strong and dependable one. I became so identified with what I did that when I stopped doing those roles, because again, I was stuck in a hospital bed, there was nowhere I could go. I was only left with my own thoughts. And sometimes that's the scariest place to be. But I I I really don't think that we talk about this enough. That it isn't it isn't the burnout. It isn't a time management problem. And it's not that you're not in gratitude for your life and the roles that you have. But as I said before, it's a self-abandonment. And it really, it might not look like a crisis on the outside. It's that internal that really makes it so dangerous. Because when we don't let anybody in to see what's happening or to call on for support, to ask for help, nobody knows. We put on that smile and we often say, I'm fine. How many times have you said that? I'm fine. Everything's fine. And you put a smile on your face and you just keep on moving. Or, I got it. I can handle it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Ultimately, you're saying, don't worry about me. And one day you end up looking in the mirror and you don't even know who that woman is anymore. You've lost her along the way. So it's that moment when you're quiet and it's unsettling, that you really feel this, what, what's happening? Where do I need to start making changes in my life? But again, you can't quite put your finger on it. And I like to call that moment that you start that recognition process, that you know that something needs to change. I call that the moment before you arise. It isn't necessarily like a rock bottom that you've hit, or maybe you have, but it's a disruption. Again, that something has to change. Where does that come from? How do you go from that capable, faith-filled, intelligent woman who ended up as a stranger to yourself? It starts as a little tiny lie that's so embedded in our culture and in our mindsets. It's in what we saw growing up. The women in our lives that they just handled it all. You didn't see them take a break. They were up from dawn until dusk and even beyond. Managing the home, managing back then, a lot of times, the family farm, because that's what they did. They took care of the kids, the cooking, the cleaning, everything. You didn't see mom or grandma necessarily take a break. So that lie is what you watched growing up. And you took that on for yourself. I know I certainly did. Because you are what you do. But again, that's a lie. Because who are you when those roles disappear? That the lie continues that your value, it lives in the output. It lives in everything that you do. That your worth is based on how productive you are. That your identity is your role. So we prove it when we get sucked into hustle culture, into overfunction. And when you begin saying yes, when you really want to say no, you keep piling the stones one layer at a time until all of a sudden it gets real topply and it's about to fall over. You make everybody's urgency or emergency your emergency. You start performing from that strength while also running on empty. How many of you heard the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup? That's a pretty common one, but yet we continue to do it. We have to figure out how to pour from the overflow when the cup is so incredibly overfilled because we know that we're filled up. It's not asking for permission. And I really, really want you to hear this today because your brain needs to hear it, and I really need you to feel it. That you are not your productivity. You're not the titles that you carry. And you are not the sum of everything you manage. Your value and your worth does not increase by your level of exhaustion. And I really hope that you hear that and feel that. Because you weren't designed to be just useful or to be in this constant performance mode. You were designed to be uniquely you in all of your ways, whatever that is. Because there was a version of you that existed before you took on all of those roles. And I want you to think back to the time before maybe you had kids in your life, before you had a spouse in your life, before you had a business or a job. It doesn't matter what it is. I want you to think of who you were before all of that. Sometimes it's easier to go back to our childhood. That carefree spirit that just lived life, that didn't have to worry about adult responsibility. Think back to you then. Were you carefree? Were you playful? Did you have an imagination? Were you a daydreamer? And then as you got older, more responsibility happened. more life happened to you, and you started to shrink that carefree spirit back. It started to disappear. Expectations and to-do lists started to happen. But I want to tell you, that inner child carefree spirit, it's not gone. It's just a little bit lost. So it's time to find that carefree spirit again, that true identity. And it's not about walking away from your life. I'm not asking you to do that. It's also not about dropping responsibility because, as we know, we still are going to have day-to-day responsibilities. But it's a knowing of who you are regardless of what you do. Being so rooted in your inner and deep God-given identity that if your roles were to change today, because some of them will, or within the next week or month, or maybe the next year to 5 years, shifts will happen and seasons will come and go. But you don't lose yourself in it because you know who you are. And that's the real work. That's where that identity renewal comes in. That's what it means to arise. There is a story in the book of Mark, chapter 5, verse 41. And if you've heard this story before, there's the young girl who she's around like 12 years old or so, that she was very sick and she passes away. Everybody has decided she's already gone. There's grief. They've given up. But you have her dad who runs to Jesus and says, I need you. Because he was on his way for Lazarus. And Jesus walks in, he takes her hand, and he whispers 2 words to her. And it's Talitha cum. Talitha cum, little girl, arise. That is such a powerful scene in the Bible. And if you've ever watched The Chosen, in there too. That's where Arise and Ascend coaching was birthed from. Because that little girl, she did get up. And everybody was amazed. They couldn't believe it. But that's the miracle. And I really want to say to you, it's time to arise. And I don't know what you walked into this room carrying today, because all of us have different things happening. And you've been going through those motions. You've been having those emotions. Or maybe you've been suppressing them. But believe me when I say that you don't have to carry that. You don't have to carry all of that alone. And you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. None of us truly like to be fixed anyway. But I will tell you that you were designed for more. More than just this version of you that is existing and just kind of going through life. You're in that cloud. Your roles are not your identity. And your busyness and exhaustion, it's not your worth. And sometimes that's hard to hear because again, we feel like our exhaustion and it's our gauge of how valuable we are. But it's not. You were made to be fully alive in this thing we call life. To be who God designed you to be. So today, it really starts with that honest question. Not what you do, but who are you? Who are you beyond all of those roles? And I don't want you to think your job, your title, your role. Who are you? That's the question I really want to leave you with. And if you can't answer it in that 30 seconds to a minute without referencing any sort of role that you play as wife, mom, husband, business owner, employee, if you can't reference it without that, then there needs to be some deeper discussion and deeper inner searching. So, I want to implore you today, don't just leave with another note on your paper. Don't just leave with that spark of, yeah, maybe I'll take some action. Maybe I'll dive deeper into this. Because if it's revealed anything to you today, I want you to leave with a decision. A decision that says, I'm done disappearing. I'm done hiding. I'm done performing for everybody else. And I'm done waiting to figure out what comes next. It's time to start coming home to you. And it doesn't have to be a loud, dramatic decision. I will say that if you're ready to take that first step, I do have the Arise Self-Renewal Check. That is my free gift to you today. And I can drop that link in the chat so you can grab that. And I'm sure Diane will make sure that it's posted for you as well. But it's an honest, guided tool for you to just see where you're at. Because it's time to start pouring back into yourself. And not into everybody else. It's time to be the man or woman God designed you to be on the other side of doing more. So, I leave you with this. Talitha Kum, little girl, arise. I want to thank you for coming today.